Hey, Greg.
Ben, how you doing?
Good, good. Beard's looking good.
What's that? Oh, thanks.
COVID beard's looking good.
Yeah, yeah, it continues. All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Greg, how you doing?
All right, Rory, how are you doing?
Good. Amanda and Trent.
Hello. How are you?
Off of mute here.
All right. I know Jason should be joining very shortly. And I just talked.
All right, good deal.
Hello.
Hey, Heather, how you doing?
Hi, good thanks.
Heather.
Two Heathers. All right, coordinated. And
How you doing, Emil?
I'm doing well. Rory.
hey, Heather or Ben, Heather Hiller or Ben, we never heard back from Darren about this meeting. Do you know if he was planning to attend?
That's surprising. I don't. I can give him a call real quick if that helps.
I can text him.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe shoot him a text.
Let me try real quick. Greg, I wasn't able to reach him, so I left him a voicemail. It sounds like Heather reached out, so um, probably best to proceed without and
Yep.
certainly catch him up afterward if that's helpful.
Yep, we can catch him up. All right. So thanks for everyone for being available today for the organizational meeting of the Scioto Peninsula New Community Authority. What we're going to do today is provide you with an awful lot of information about the development, really try to bring you up to speed. We hope and expect you all will have questions about the community authority and the development. please don't hesitate to ask as we're going through this. Some of us have been working on this for what, 2, 3, 4 years at this point. So a lot of history here. We're going to do the best we can to get you caught up. Before we dive in, I was hoping we could just do a round of introductions for the folks here. My name is Greg Daniels. I'm with the law firm Squire, Patton Boggs. We do a lot of work on real estate development and new community authorities here in town. We have been involved in this development for a while, and we are really happy to be at this point and getting ready to get things closed up and construction finally moving forward on the peninsula. So I'm just going to go across my screen and call out folks to introduce themselves, say a little bit more about their background and their involvement in the project. I will start on my screen to my left, who is Amy Taylor with CDDC. So Amy, I think you're on mute right now. If you can unmute and introduce yourself and give us some background.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Taylor. I'm with the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation, and we are the organization who's been partnering with the city to make this project happen and to bring in the developers and get the development started. I'm the project manager from CDC.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Ben, you're next.
Unmute myself. I'm having internet issues, so I'm going to dial in by phone after this. But hi, everyone. Ben Pearson from Rockbridge. I'm Senior Vice President in charge of development and have been working on this project for going on 2 years now. We represent the hotel component of the development, and we're based in Columbus, Ohio, and have done roughly 350 hotel projects over the last almost 30 years, and have not had the opportunity to do a ton in our hometown. And so we're really excited about this one and really making it great. So great to meet all of you.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Rory, you're next.
All right, Rory McGinnis, Deputy Director of Development at the city. Been working on the Scioto Peninsula project since December of last year, and it's been great to work with many of you, and excited to see things really start to come together, and also want to welcome the other members that were appointed by Columbus City Council, and congratulate you, and also let you know I'm looking forward to working more with you to make the Scioto Peninsula a wonderful place.
Awesome. Thank you, Rory. Next, we have Amanda Shaw.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Amanda Shaw. I'm the Vice President of Administration and Finance at COSI. I've actually been with COSI for 20 years this week, ironically. And so seeing a lot of changes, and we're very excited to see what's next for the peninsula. So happy to work with everyone.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Trent, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. Trent Smith, the Executive Director of the Franklinton Board of Trade. We serve, serve as the Chamber of Commerce for the Franklinton neighborhood. I'm also a resident of the neighborhood. So we obviously have a lot of interest in what happens on the peninsula to bring that momentum deeper into the western part of our area. So we're excited to see this getting kicked off, and happy to provide input. And thanks for being. I want to thank Rory for inviting me to be part of it.
Great. Thanks, Trent. Heather Whaling.
Hi, my name is Heather Whaling. I am the founder and president of Gabbin Communication. We're a public relations and communications office based here in Columbus. Our office is at the corner of 4th and Main, so we're right downtown, and excited to see the Scioto Peninsula continue to help downtown grow. Separate from Gabbin, I also am the chair of the board for the Women's Fund of Central Ohio, and I sit on the city's Columbus Women's Commission project.
All right. Thanks, Heather. Heather Hiller.
Hi, Greg. First, I want to say I just texted with Darren. He didn't have this on his calendar, so I forwarded it to him. I hope he'll be joining us shortly. I am the Vice President of Legal and Development for Daimler. We are doing the office component of this project. This will be our third downtown development in the last 5 or 6 years, Amy. the third with the CDDC, and we're excited to move from the downtown core over to the peninsula.
All right. Thank you, Heather. I think Emil is next.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Emil Williams. I'm the Deputy CEO of CODA, Central Ohio Transit Authority. And pre-COVID, we provided about 60,000 trips daily, about 1 million trips a year. Looking forward to being part of the group.
Great. Thanks, Emil. Jason?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Jason Jenkins, Director of External Affairs for Mayor Ginther's office. Excited to be a part of this project and provide some input where I can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jason. And looks like we have Darren now. Darren, how are you doing?
Good, good. Sorry it's late. I didn't have it. I think it went to a wrong email, but here now, Darren Kentner with Flaherty and Collins. I'm the general counsel, which is meaningless here and everywhere else because I don't do any legal work anymore. Purely a developer, project manager, kind of, if you will. So, and the point person for Flaherty on this project. Great project, great location, great city, and 22 days from getting it closed. We're excited.
Yep, we're counting down. Heather Hiller, I know you've been counting down with your calendar on the wall. So, well, thanks everyone. I think we're going to let that serve as the roll call of the trustees that are present today. Next item, and I'm just going to be working down our agenda that we sent out last week. The next item on the agenda is their certificate of public notice. The way we noticed this meeting is we posted on the CDDC's Scioto Peninsula website the fact that we're having this meeting. The city of Columbus posted it on its website. And we also, for those of you who read the legal notices in the dispatch, might have noticed the publication last Thursday in the dispatch that we were having this meeting today. So given the profile of this authority, we'll probably continue with the similar notice strategy in the future. There is a resolution for you in your packet today that specifically outlines notice policies and procedures. We'll talk more about that later. But we have done plenty of notice for this meeting. Amy, I believe this is being broadcast on CDDC's Facebook Live page. So anyone who wants to watch us can tune in on Facebook Live and watch the proceedings. So we're all TV stars now in that way. So again, we're a public body. And so we do try to be open and accessible to the public to watch what's going on. They have the right to observe us. We have asked and provided an opportunity for the public to submit comments that we can take into consideration during our meeting. So occasionally we do get comments from the public for these community authorities. I am going to skip over a little bit the background and role of the authority for now. We're going to get into that in detail in the briefings that we have for you. I did want to touch base on just a few big picture things for this authority and its operations. This is really just kind of nuts and bolts stuff. I believe most, if not all of you, have submitted your oaths and your public ethics acknowledgement letters. Thanks to all of you for working through that process with us. Back when we can meet in person, that was usually pretty easy. I'd bring those to the meeting. I'm a notary. We could take care of it right at the start of the meeting. So I appreciate everyone's patience with these remote meetings and working through that. For quorum and voting requirements for the board, you'll see this pop up from time to time. We don't have an issue today with quorum. We have great attendance. Thanks for everyone. We have all but one trustee here today, so we have a quorum. By statute, we are required to have a quorum with a majority of the city council appointed members. So the way we have set up this authority, and this is in accordance with state law, we have a total of 11 trustees. It's a pretty big board, 6 appointed by city council, 5 appointed by the developers, trustees, that we're going to try to maximize the attendance at every meeting. But let's say we do have a meeting with 6 trustees. To keep that public majority, that means we have to have at least 4 publicly appointed members by city council. And then we can have 2 developer members be present and voting at a meeting. Sometimes we might have extra developer members at meetings. That happens from time to time. In that case, you can't vote, but you might see me manage the quorum from time to time in that manner to make sure we are complying with state law. As I mentioned, these are open meetings. This board is subject to public records requirements. Practically, what that means for each of you is keep track of your emails related to this board separately. Your emails are that relate to this board's business are potentially subject to public records requirements. I would recommend copying me on any emails that pertain to this board's business. That makes replying to public records requests easier. And if any one of you has a concern with the email address that you're using for this board's business, we have certainly had many occasions where members set up separate emails just for use by this board. So we can work through all that with each of you, but that's the main way that public records laws for this board are going to impact you as individual trustees. We'll get into this a little bit more later with elections, but by law, the board is required to have 4 officer positions. I outlined this in the memo I sent to you last week. There will be a chair and a vice chair that by law you have to select from amongst the board members. There is also a treasurer and a secretary that by statute we have to elect. Those can be board members. They don't have to be. They can be non-board members. Beyond those 4, we can have additional officers to support those 4 statutorily required officers if we want to. We don't have to. That's a board prerogative. Again, we'll talk about that more. Officer selections. We'll also have a set of bylaws that we'll talk about later on in the meeting. And finally, for each of you, there is required to be posted a $10,000 surety bond, basically to protect the authority against any misdeeds that you might do. The authority itself will be responsible for securing those bonds. We'll get into, now in terms of ethics laws and the ways you could get into trouble, basically on this authority, it comes down to don't steal money. And as long as you're not stealing money, you're probably going to be okay. I'd also say, don't take dark money contributions. Usually not a problem for community authorities, but, generally, don't steal and you're going to be fine. We've never really had an issue with the community authority board, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. If in question, feel free to, give me a call, shoot me an email if you have a question about anything that's going on. But typically, ethics issues, things like that, instances where there can be a draw on the surety bond don't pop up really ever with these sorts of boards. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Again, we're going to keep coming back to a lot of these organizational topics throughout the day, but does anyone have any initial questions based on what we've talked about so far? All right, I see a lot of shaking heads, so that's good. If there's no questions on that, what I'd like us to do is go into some of the briefing presentations about what is the Peninsula development, what's the role of the authority, why are we really all here talking about these matters. So Amy, I don't know if this is something, can you bring up the presentation on your screen? Is that the way we're set up here?
Yes, let me get this. Greg, do you want me to pull up all 3, the combined one?
Whatever's easiest for you. I think I'm going to kick it over to you to start it. I think the combined one's probably the easiest, but
Okay. Can everyone see that? We're good?
I can. Yep.
Okay. If it's okay, Greg, I'll just get started.
Dive right in.
Okay. We wanted to provide an overview of what you've gotten yourself into. What is the Scioto Peninsula? And give you an opportunity to ask questions. As Greg mentioned, I think even Ben and Heather sort of implied as well, we've all been doing this for a very long time. So if I am going through something too quickly, or if I'm going over it and using some kind of acronym or something that you're not comfortable with, please let me know. It's definitely not intentional. It's just, this has become second nature. So I might be starting at a different level than what I should be. But the peninsula is the community that we believe will be walkable, bikeable, live, work, play, and it really has key elements to make this the next great neighborhood, not just in the city of Columbus, but really in our state and in our region. This is an image of a full build out if we're looking towards Franklinton, if you're on top of the AEP building. And in this key first phase, we're going to have modern offices. We're going to have an independent lifestyle hotel. We're going to have resort style living and shopping and dining on the first floor. And this is a locator map, and you can see right here is COSI. This is the new National Veterans Memorial and Museum. These are the railroad tracks that separate the Scioto Peninsula from Franklinton. And just by way, so that no one is surprised at this, the Scioto Peninsula actually lives under the governance of downtown. Even though a lot of people think it's Franklinton, it follows the same statutes as the Downtown Commission. So, but we've been really looking at it as a gateway to all the wonderful energy happening in Franklinton. And of course, the new revitalization that's occurred in the core business district. And this is going to be that gateway, that space in which we're having success bleed both ways. So into Franklinton and over to the core business district. At built out, we believe, and this is a 10-year build out, we believe that we can get up to 1,800 residential units, 2 million square feet of office, and 400 keys of hotels. I think the interesting part is Mayor Ginther has been very involved in this, and as has Council President Hardin and the rest of the council members. And they've really challenged us to look at this as the next great place for office. And one of the reasons for that is when I go to trade associations or organizations throughout the country who deal with downtown issues, the fact that we have a 56-acre peninsula with 26 acres still left to be built out, all under one ownership or ownerships of like CDDC and the city, is unheard of. And so this is our one chance to really bring in a great employer and locate them within the downtown with some of the best views. So when you're downtown, you don't have views of the skyline, but when you're on the peninsula, you do. And so you can see here, this area has already been built out. When we talk about a few of the things I'll get to, it's the boxes, the massing and scaling that's in this that is the future. So the Peninsula NCA, what you guys have been asked to be part of are the colored blocks. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are what will break ground in 2020. So we're going to have an office, a hotel, 2 residential units, and then 2 parking garages. We have 2 other parcels that are part of this NCA and a variety of other spaces that are included in the peninsula, but not part of this NCA. So I'll stop there just to see if there are any questions before I continue. Great. We might wonder why a lot of people think this is going to be the next great neighborhood, not just for our community, but around the region. It's because so much investment has already been made. This looks at and sits right across from the Scioto Mile. We have the Scioto Greenways that was just completed a few years ago, really taking a look at that riverfront and creating that green space, that front door for the entire peninsula. We've got the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, and we understand that this is that connection to Franklinton. So when we look at the peninsula uses, overall total in the 10-year build out for the 26 acres that are not currently built upon, we know that we believe we can get 2 million square feet of office, 1,800 units of residential, up to 400 keys of hotels. We'll build parking as needed, and this is 26 acres of a site in which there's relatively nothing on it, nothing to really displace. The phase one that we're talking about right now that will start construction in 2020 includes one 240,000 square foot office building, 2 residential, which will total 329 units, 1 hotel that they've gotten up to 198 keys for, a parking garage, which will be financed and owned by the city, but will be used by the patrons and the elements within the development. And this is all going to take 7.3 acres. This is going to be a small amount of space, but a lot of parties are taking place on this. And the first is that Public Utilities is going to start this month. I think they're trying to get out here this week or next week. And that's going to be to make the public utilities available and grossed up to match what the development needs. They plan about a 12-month process before they will finish. The residential, office, and hotel all plan to start this September and plan to be done in spring, summer 2022. We're going to talk about an NCA-owned street called Highwater Alley. It is an NCA-owned street, so it's not going to be part of the city streets, and it will traverse the development. And we're going to begin work on that in October of this year, and it will be complete in time for the summer 2022 openings. The garage I mentioned, there's actually 2 garages that will be managed as 1 garage, which just means that if you have a parking card, you can get into either garage. It's 1,400 spaces total, and we're going to begin that work in December 2020, and it will open by June 2022. And again, that's a city-funded, city-owned garage that Capital South will build for the city, as we have for many other garages that the city owns. And there are 6 public streets, and they are there either on the plat or actually there in reality. They all need to be adjusted, widened, sometimes narrowed, and new right-of-way, sidewalk, streetscape. That work is going to start by the city in January 2021 and complete by fall 2022. So we've got 3 developers, Capital South, and the NCA, and the city, all within a very small space. So we're working and have been working for more than a year on weekly coordination meetings. These are the project team members. Again, I work for the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation. We've been working closely with the city on this. Flaherty and Collins is the residential developer. Darren is on the phone, and he is a member of this board, and they will be doing the the 2 residential buildings we'll be talking about. Daimler is the office builder, and Heather is the representative on this NCA board for them. And Rockbridge is the hotel developer, and Ben is their representative. We just thought we'd show you this so you can see this is one of the taller residential buildings. It's going to be along Bell and State Street, and it's 11 stories high. And then this is an overview of their building. So this is going to be their second. This is their first, and this is going to be their second building. And it's going to be connected over Highwater Alley by this little bridge, and it will be connected to the garage with this bridge. This is actually a great rendering of the hotel. We're actually looking towards the skyline of downtown, and you can see all the architectural elements they put in here with the terraced balconies and rooftop gathering spaces. And that's going to be 198 keys. And then this is Daimler's office building. You can see they've taken advantage of the concept of balconies as well, and plans to be 8 stories and about 240,000 square feet of office space. And this is the Peninsula garage. Again, 2 garages operated as 1. There'll be a long one taking us, this is State Street right here, and the long one will go north all the way to Capitol. And the south one will go south just a block to a street called Chapel. And these are some renderings of High Water Alley. And this is State Street, but you can see it's going to traverse with High Water Alley. And these are the conceptual idea of gateway elements. It will be part of the High Water Alley bidding process though. And so we wanted to show that because again, the High Water Alley is that NCA owned street. This is High Water Alley looking north. It's an opportunity for us to create a sense of place. So we're looking at the Cantonary lights to be a fun and urban, put this in a fun and urban context. And this is again, just another view of that and a bird's eye view. And so Greg, unless anyone has any questions, I can turn it back to you, Greg, for the role of the NCA, and I can just flip through here as you tell me to. Great.
Thanks, Amy. That's
Amy.
good. Any questions from anyone? Trent? Yeah, go ahead.
I do have one regarding the parking garages. Will those have basically public access? Like for example, if somebody wanted to drive down to go to Land Grant or Strongwater, they could actually park in those garages?
Absolutely, we
Okay.
hope they will. Yes, I should have mentioned that. Thanks for giving me that opportunity, Trent. They are public, because they are publicly owned, there will be public garages. The three elements, the office, hotel, and residential, have long-term parking agreements with the city, but it will absolutely be open to the public, probably for monthly, but certainly for transient parking.
Okay.
All right, other questions? Hearing none, we'll go on and spend a few minutes talking about the authority's role in this greater development project. New community authorities, they're something that's been a feature of Central Ohio development for about 25 or 30 years now. They have been used in a lot of different developments in Central Ohio. And they really have three main uses, and we will too for this authority. Community authorities are often used to acquire or construct improvements. And Amy, maybe if you could go back to the previous slide real quick. Yep, thank you. They are used to finance improvements, and a lot of times when we're talking, you'll hear the term community facility. That is the statutory term that is used for public improvements that are acquired, financed, or the last category, maintained or used by a new community authority. So we might be talking about public improvement, sometimes purposes of this authority. So in particular, for this development, the community authority was formed to acquire and construct High Water Alley. We'll get into more of all of these in a minute. And also to help facilitate community facilities for the Rockbridge development. Ben will go into that in much more detail in a little bit. The authority has a financing role to play for High Water Alley, for some of the right-of-way enhancements in city right-of-way, while the authority won't be constructing or owning those enhancements, it will be contributing to the cost of those enhancements. It'll be cooperating with the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority. Many of you might be familiar with that body. That has something called a bond fund, which helps finance projects like High Water Alley and other infrastructure projects that are necessary for these sorts of developments. And there is also a developer donation to some of these costs that the authority will use for High Water Alley and the enhancements. Finally, over time, the authority will be responsible for the maintenance and use of High Water Alley. The city right-of-way enhancements are also expected to be maintained by the authority, at least contribute to the city for the costs of maintaining those special elements in the city right-of-way. And we expect for the authority to enter into a cooperative relationship with the Scioto Peninsula Association. That's an owners association of the parcels and the buildings that Amy talked about a little bit ago that are part of the Scioto Peninsula Community Authority. And what we found in other authorities, and we thought was a good idea for this authority, is since this is such an integrated development, that it made sense for this authority to cooperate with the association and let those owners really be on point for maintaining the high water alley, city enhancements, and other elements, because they're going to be maintaining a lot of other things as well. And there's real economies of scale in doing so. So we're going to talk about all that in a little further detail. But Amy, maybe we can flip over to the next slide here. So the first role is acquisition and construction of the community facilities. So first, for High Water Alley, that's property that's actually currently owned by the city. All of this property is actually currently owned by the city. The plan is for the city to convey the property that's necessary for the phase 1 of the development that Amy talked about earlier, to each of the individual developers. So the office developer, Daimler, will get its parcel, Flaherty and Collins will get its 2 parcels, and Rockbridge will get its parcel for the hotel. However, there are 3 pieces of property that are not in the city's right-of-way, but also are not part of the private development property, and that's what High Water Alley is. So City Council has approved the transfer of those 3 pieces of property to the community authority for, and on that property, High Water Alley will be constructed. So that's step 1. We're going to build an alley. We need to get the property for the alley. The second part of the construction I alluded to earlier, this is for the right-of-way features that the city will be constructing in its own right-of-way. So the way the city typically handles these sorts of features is that a party, in this case, the community authority, will make a contribution to the city via a contribution agreement to fund the cost of these improvements. So Amy, I believe the cost of these improvements are expected to be about $1.3 million or so. And can you give just a few examples of what these sorts of improvements are that are in the right-of-way features?
Sure. What we realized is that the city, we wanted to create a neighborhood space. So one of the things we're going to do is add pavers at key intersections. So the intersections of State, Rush, Capitol, and Chapel with High Water Alley, to try and create an idea that I'm in a neighborhood. It also helps with traffic calming. And so we'll be doing paver blocks there. We also, the city doesn't put up trash cans or bike racks, 2 things that we really want to create that sense of place. So we are adding those. And then there is the area around COSI, or across the street from COSI, that the city was just going to have as an asphalt street. And we wanted to create that plaza experience, and it would connect what on the west side is the hotel and the east side is the beginning of the Dorian Green Park in front of COSI, and those will all be pavers. So what we did is we worked collaboratively with the city. They have a very strong, we're very lucky, they have a very strong downtown standards guideline. And so they are making a lot of the improvements under those guidelines. What we wanted to be extra, though, is what the developers and CDC worked with the city on to create these enhancement packages.
Thanks, Amy. And then to execute that, the city has a standard agreement that it enters into with community authorities or developers for these sorts of special enhancements. So as part of the transactions that the community authority will be asked to enter into, one of those will be the agreement with the city, known as the contribution agreement. The last item on this particular slide is a construction agreement for High Water Alley. As Amy mentioned earlier, the way we expect to execute the construction of High Water Alley is actually have CDDC's subsidiary, Scioto Peninsula Holdings, do the bidding and manage the construction work. So they're willing to take that burden from this board which is typical to have a developer do that, and manage the construction of High Water Alley. So what will be proposed is this board enters into a construction agreement with Scioto Peninsula Holdings to complete the design of High Water Alley, which has largely already been completed, and then to bid the work and manage the work. The authority's role in that will be from the financing sources that we'll talk about in a minute, to do disbursements, probably monthly disbursements as construction progresses, in order to pay for those costs of be able to pay contractors and subcontractors for their work on High Water Alley. So that is the general plan for construction and contributions to the city. Again, we're going to touch on these in more detail later and at our next meeting. Amy, if you'll advance the slide.
Just a quick question, if I could.
Yeah.
In terms of how are we on those projects that are being bid by the NCA, how are we promoting minority and women-owned businesses participating in those projects?
That would be part of the bid process that CDDC and its subsidiary would undertake. And Amy, I don't know if you can speak a little bit to the processes you use to promote those involvements.
Rory, we would be happy to insert a target in there to ensure that it's known that it's a priority, and of course work with the mayor's office of diversity and inclusion to make sure that people are getting the opportunity to go out and learn about this.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy, that was also going to be my question about that too. I'd love to see that inserted.
Okay, yeah, Amy, why don't you and I and Rory coordinate? And again, we're not planning to approve any of these agreements at this meeting. So when we come back for our second meeting, we can flesh out those details a little bit more for board members on exactly what that plan is. This next slide talks about what we're calling the developer agreement, which each of the three developers to wrap up a number of things as to the relationship between the developers and this body. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of interdependence between the developers and the community authority. That's the design of these authorities. It's meant to promote a public-private partnership. So one of the things that will be put in front of this board is a developer agreement, which will do several things. The way we are envisioning this is the NCA would commit to construct High Water Alley. Of course, the developers have a vested interest in making that happen, and to enter into the construction agreement with Scioto Peninsula Holdings, we talked about a minute ago, to issue bonds to finance the costs of High Water Alley and the city enhancements. And also, again, this is a cooperative enterprise. We want to have input from the developers on the final budget that's put together for those improvements, as well as the amount of the bonds that we'll talk about in a minute that the authority is proposed to sell to the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority that would ultimately raise about $5.4 million for these improvements. The total development budget for the improvements is about $7.4 million currently. So it is anticipated that there'll be a significant portion of bonding to pay for that. The other thing that we envision this developer agreement dealing with is the $2 million donation from the three developers and how that gets used. And the developers, of course, are not making that donation for any and all purposes or out of the goodness of their heart. This is for the construction of High Water Alley and the related city right-of-way enhancements. In that $7.4 million budget I mentioned, there is some contingency, some escalation, since this is about a 2-year project. So there is the chance that some of that $2 million would be left over at the end of the day. So this agreement would also spell out how that money would be used if we have any leftover money. And We envision it would be used for a mixture of paying NCA administrative costs. These typically don't cost a lot, but there is some amount of administrative costs every year for legal, for accounting, for audit. We are subject to state audit and we have to pay the state auditor. Probably not a lot of operation and maintenance in the first couple years of this authority for High Water Alley or the city right-of-way enhancements. But once those are constructed, the $2 million could be a funding source for that, or it could help to offset some of the community development charges that the developers have committed to pay over time, year after year from 2023 through 2052 to help pay for these costs. So the development agreement will help spell out all of those things and really establish the relationship between the three developers and the community authority for how High Water Alley is going to get constructed, paid for, and operated and maintained over time. So Amy, if you could advance to the next slide. So as I've been mentioning, a big role of this authority is on the financing of the community facilities, way the community. First, part of the financing for this is a tax increment financing arrangement with the city of Columbus. For those of you that are not familiar with tax increment financing, basically what that is as the private assets are being constructed, real property taxes will naturally increase with new construction and new assessed valuation. What tax increment financing does is divert a portion of those new taxes into a special fund that can be used for public improvements like the right-of-way enhancements and like High Water Alley. So what the city has done is it has established a TIF area for the new community authorities area and has approved a tax increment financing agreement and cooperative agreement with the community authority, whereby the city will agree to pay over a portion of those funds. And then the new community authority will use those funds to help pay for the debt service on debt to be issued to fund High Water Alley. The second point here is, again, the way we envision coming up with the upfront money is issuing bonds to the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority, who will in turn issue bonds out to the general bond market. The Finance Authority has an investment grade rated bond fund that makes access to the municipal bond market very easy. This is the same bond market that the city of Columbus will issue bonds to every year, that Franklin County issues bonds to periodically. So it's a very active market, a very easy place to raise money. And the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority provides a very convenient way to access that market because of its investment grade rating. The TIF money that the NCA receives from the city of Columbus under that TIF agreement would be pledged to the Finance Authority to help pay for these bonds. As I mentioned, the developers have each agreed to pay an annual payment called a community development charge that will also be pledged to the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority to pay for these bonds. We are envisioning an approximately, probably somewhere between a $7.2 and $7.5 million total bond issue that will raise about $5.4 million for costs of High Water Alley. So that, coupled with the $2 million from the developer donation, gets us to that $7.4 million figure I mentioned earlier, which is around the current estimated amount for the High Water Alley plus the city right-of-way improvements. Give or take a little bit once we get to bidding and the actual construction costs. So, and as I noted, this sort of arrangement between a community authority and the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority very, very common. Recent examples, if you are familiar with the One Neighborhood development, we've done several bond issues, the same structure in support of that development. We've done a similar bond issue for Founders Park, which is just south of Battelle, and Grandview Crossing, which is a new development on the border of Columbus and Grandview along Dublin Road, also utilizes the same structure. It's proved very successful and very beneficial for these developments. And then I already mentioned that last point for the community development charge. So Amy, I think we can flip to the next slide. And then the last few slides all focused on what happens up front, really where the action is for the next couple years. But we, of course, don't want to forget about long-term operation and maintenance of these improvements that we're spending $7.5 million on. So there's really three prongs here. One is a maintenance agreement with the city for enhancements. Again, these sorts of enhancements are nothing new for the city. They have a very standard form of agreement that they enter into with community authorities and developers, really where the community authorities and the developers take on the responsibility for maintaining these enhancements. Just like it's not, in the city's normal standard operating procedures to build these sorts of enhancements, it's also not in their standard operating procedures and funding to maintain them. So that's why the community authority and the developers and property owners would be chipping in for those. Second, as I mentioned before, there would be a maintenance agreement contemplated with the Scioto Peninsula Association to really take the maintenance burden off the authority. The authority would still have oversight. After all, it's the authority's property in High Water Alley, and it's the authority's maintenance agreement with the city. But we've had a lot of success with owners associations taking this burden off of community authorities and really taking charge of the operation and maintenance, subject to the authority's oversight. And finally, if any of you have touched on or been familiar with other complicated urban dense mixed use projects, there is always a series of easements establishing the relationships amongst the various property owners. The Peninsula is no different. So it is envisioned that the authority would enter into an easement agreement, which with each of the property owners in the development, establishing all of the usual sorts of easements, anything from easements for foundations and foundation footers and door swings and stormwater, down to some of the elements that everyone wants to really activate this as an attractive place to be. So there would be, for example, cafe seating easements, where in High Water Alley and certain designated areas, the property owners can put out cafe seating and have some nice patio seating for their commercial restaurants that are there. There are parking easements for the on-street parking and similar sorts of things to really help activate High Water Alley. So there'll be an easement agreement with each of the property owners there. So let me pause there for a minute. I know I've been talking for about 15 minutes or so on this. Any other questions at this point? Again, we wanted to put this out there as an introduction. We're not going to be voting on any of these today, but we wanted to get a good briefing for you and give you the chance to think about it before our next meeting. But let me pause there and ask for any questions.
Is there a list of, I'm sorry, this is Jason Jenkins. How's everybody doing? Is there a list of some of the property owners that we will need to acquire easement agreements from?
Jason and so we will have 3 total easement agreements up front, one with Daimler, one with Rockbridge, and one with Flaherty and Collins. So that's it from an easement agreement standpoint. And it'll be easements largely to the property owner's benefit for High Water Alley. we will have some easements coming back to the authority, for example, and I can never remember the name of the lighting that runs above the street. Amy or Heather, I don't know.
Catenary.
Catenary. So we'll need some easements, for example, to run that lighting, easements to the benefit of the authority. But it's really amongst the development group here that will have those easements.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Jason, this all of these things pretty much have gone through public service and finance and management to make sure that the correct things need to be acquired in order to do these things. So there's been a lot of work on it already.
Okay, good. Rory, maybe I need to connect with you afterwards just to get a little bit of background on what has been done. I also want to talk a little bit about the impact of the community at some point.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Any other questions at this point?
Yes, this is Emil. So there's been a considerable amount of work done already in terms of agreements and a path forward. And this is pretty comprehensive in terms of oversight for the board and some action that the board will have to take. Is there a process to kind of put all of this sequentially in terms of when board will have to act and what are the critical things that the board will have to act on?
The answer is yes. In terms of the upfront agreements, those are all contemplated for our second meeting because those are things to get put into place really to allow construction of the development to move forward. Within each of those agreements, though, there is essentially an annual timeline for things that the authority has to pay attention to and potentially act on. For example, there's timelines contemplated for the Scioto Peninsula Association to deliver an annual budget for the authority's review. And so that's gives us the opportunity every year to exercise oversight over the ongoing management and maintenance.
And I guess that's what I'm really getting to, as a board, how much time do we have to vet a process, timing, those sorts of things as we provide oversight, how much information we're going to be able to have access to and to vet things given, what I see as some critical time, some time points.
And so I think the short answer is as much information as you'd like to have, keeping in mind that you might not want every single detail. So that's something we can certainly work with you and other board members to figure out exactly what kind of information you would like to see as part of this. And again, keeping in mind, there are plans for the improvements. The improvements haven't been bid yet. So we don't have all the final construction numbers for that, but we do have estimates that can be provided.
Right, and I'm sensitive to the time constraints that could be associated with moving forward. So I just need to understand all of that in context.
Yep. So why don't we follow up with some more information to you and the board members about that, a little bit more of a calendar, maybe expand on the calendar that Amy had prior in her presentation to give a little bit more flavor for the timing and where board oversight and input is being looked for.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from the group? All right. Amy, I think, are we getting into Ben's part of the presentation here? All right, Ben, why don't we turn it over to you? And Amy, I think you can just continue to advance slides.
Sure. Yeah, Amy, if you don't mind going to the kind of renders there, probably the second rendering is even a little more illustrative. Yeah, thank you, Amy. So Hey everyone, thanks for your time, and I know we're running up against the hour here, so I'll try to be brief. But the reason we want to bring this to your attention is, and Emil, this comes to your question, is in advance of closing, which is on the land, which is scheduled for September 1st. At the next NTA board meeting, we'll request this board's approval of a supplementary declaration to this NTA, and essentially what that is a subcomponent or a subpool to the NTA, kind of specific to the hotel, and so I'll explain that a bit more. The question is why, and so what we did in the background here is the hotel used to sit in a parcel which is further back towards Starling. At the urging of city leaders, we moved that to kind of the forefront in the central parcel here. And we were planning on doing a more limited hotel, which you might consider a select service hotel. So less programming, less amenities. And as we moved that hotel to the new central parcel, and as we realized how special this project was going to be, how much the city was invested, how much the CDC had invested, how much the co-developers and Daimler and Flaherty had invested, and how special this could be, we wanted to make the project even more special. And so what we did was try to really enhance and said, we're going to use this NCA mechanism to produce a funding vehicle to really expand the programming and how dynamic the hotel parcel was going to be, which would ultimately benefit the entire development. If you go back to, don't actually go back, but if you can recall back to where this hotel sits in the development, phase one is at the center of the 26 acres, and this hotel sits in the very center of phase one, facing Dorian Green and Cosi. And so what we did is, instead of, which is the logical thing, is, developers will typically maximize the density of your site. You'll build it as vertical as you can, stuff as much on that parcel as you can. So what we did instead was say, let's create some open spaces and some navigable spaces and some spaces where you could hold events and more special, unique features that I'll walk through, but really try to make this a center point and really pedestrian friendly to a live, work, play environment, so that it's not just pure vertical. It's, there's a place where people want to be. And so I'll walk you through. Amy, if you don't mind advancing just a little bit to the next slide. Thank you. So, the CDC and the city envision this as a highly amenitized community, walkable community. And so what we did to try to support that vision was to try to redesign our hotel, or align the design of our project to support that vision. And Amy, if you want to go forward just one more slide for me as well. So what we did was added about $4 million, or included about $4 million of additional amenities into our project in the center of the master development. And those elements include what we call a gear garage, which is basically a place where folks can rent, a bike or a scooter or a kayak or some outdoor piece of equipment that they can use within the development. They can take to the riverfront and use the benefit of the Scioto Mile. We've added an expanded gathering spaces, added a library of sorts in our central gathering area. We've added alleys and alleyways to create interesting spaces for people to congregate and move throughout the development, which we've seen work exceptionally well in other cities, and use the muse from Denver to kind of envision that. We added an expanded fitness center that can serve an expanded capacity, and we've added outdoor gathering and activation spaces where you could hold events. They're adjacent to Highwater Alley, and so our vision is that that those events don't have to be limited to Highwater Alley. They could start to create a market or farmers market or other events on these spaces. And so we can walk you through that. Amy, do you mind advancing one more slide? And so essentially what this will do, and I'll try to paraphrase here, is we're going to generate a pool of surplus funds there'll be a special assessment on hotel guest room night, and that'll generate a pool of funds. That pool of funds will first go to pay for the cost that you've you've already seen today, which include the high water alley street improvements and the public street enhancements. So that's the first thing, is we'll pay the obligation of those enhancements and those obligations. The second would be then to pay toward costs associated and a bond to fund these additional public enhancements and the expanded amenities. And so essentially what we're doing is using the vehicle of the NCA to enhance the overall development and over amenitize, if you will, the central parcel. And it's kind of aligned with our brand, which we want to say we're the central hub of this development and of the community, and a welcoming and gathering place. And that's kind of how we're going to position the hotel. And so the additional amenities will align with that. Amy, if you don't mind moving forward a bit. And so this just goes on to speak about how we'll levy a special assessment, which is contemplated in the primary declaration. We'll levy it through the supplementary declaration. And so the hotel will pay for both the private and public streets, as well as these additional amenities through that charge. And should other guests desire to come and use those facilities, there'll be a market-based charge that will also go to pay for those facilities. And Amy, if you could advance just one more for me. And this just kind of lays out from a plan standpoint. It's a little difficult from the renderings, and I recognize we know our plan very well, but what you'll see here is, instead of a dense box where everything is concentrated and it's rooms, and we're trying to suck every bit of revenue out of the project that we can, what we did was we expanded it and made it diverse and communal and activated. And so and to do those enhanced facilities, we propose investing about $4.2 million more, which will pay through this vehicle. And over time, we've worked with Greg, who's been extremely helpful in helping us understand this and navigate it, as well as Amy and talked with others in the city and Mike Stevens. And so wanted to take this opportunity to help everyone understand the concept here, certainly take any questions, so that, Emil, to your point, you're not seeing it and being asked to vote on it in the same meeting. So with that, Greg, if I missed anything, feel free to add, but happy to answer any questions anyone has.
And sorry if I missed it, but how are these $4.2 million being bid separately from the construction of the hotel, since it's going to be owned by the NCA, or is this all part of the hotel construction cost?
Yeah, it won't be bid separately, because it would ultimately lead to a higher cost, but we have sub-segmented it out with our general contractor, Hunt, to be able to understand and have a partitioned cost segment. Thank you, Roy.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Any other questions for Ben?
If something comes up, feel free to reach out to me in advance of our next meeting, and appreciate your time and consideration.
Thanks, Ben. And I do just want to, as we're leaving these briefings and the subjects we talked about with these briefings, just mention to the board something to keep in mind. These are, in the board's business is public business. It's subject to open meetings. What that means is a majority of the board members should not be deliberating these business items outside of a public meeting, an official board meeting that we have. And that includes not only, getting 6 of you together and talking about it, but also have a series of conversations with the same effect. That is the same as getting together. But what you can do, and what we really encourage you to do, is as you have questions, please ask them. We can provide information and briefings on them outside of board meetings. And if you have other things that you want to see addressed at board meetings, please let us know. We can prepare them. We can bring them back to the board meetings in terms of additional briefings, in terms of information. Any requests for information, any requests for briefings, any requests for items you would like to see on the agenda are all fine. That is not considered deliberation of board business. So it's really discussing the merits, talking about the ideas and the policy decisions of the board that must be addressed in a public meeting. Outside of that, we can get you all the information that you want. So please don't hesitate to ask. We understand this is a ton of material. That's why we put a couple weeks between this meeting and our next meeting to give you time for it to sink in, to ask questions, to make requests of what you'd like to see at our next meeting. So
I have a question.
Yep.
Hey, Ben, I don't think we need to go back to the slide, but when you showed the rendering of the hotel and you were talking about how you were making it more special, just to the right of that, there was a sawtooth roof building, like a shorter building. Is that part of the hotel, or what is that supposed to be?
It's a separate building. It's about 2,200 square feet. It's not part of our total hotel is about 148,000 square feet. That's about 2,000. Our objective, if we can get a tenant in there, is to build that and kind of make that a special space, whether that's a little market, or maybe it's we're working with the North Market, maybe that's a vendor from the North Market that can lease that space. But what we did is, instead of making it all in line and kind of a little uninteresting, we try to set that apart. And there'll be, our hope is that we can do little vendor windows in that back alley, so that you might be able to walk up for coffee and go sit at the back window, or do something like that. So just trying to make it more interesting.
Sure. Okay. I like that roof line. I was just curious if that was part of the hotel, or what the deal with that was.
It's on our part, so it'll be part of our project if we
Okay.
can get a tenant. Yeah. Thank you, Trent.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda then. We typically provide with these community authorities a public comment session. Public comments are, of course, pretty difficult in this format. We did ask folks if they had comments to submit them by email. To my knowledge, we have not gotten any sort of public comments or emails. Amy, I don't think any came into your office. Any other board members? Have you received any other sort of public comments? Okay, that's fine. That's more often than not the answer we have for these, but certainly we have a place on our agenda and are open to public comment for the authority's business. The next item on the agenda is the introduction of new motions or resolutions. We have 7 of them today scheduled. The first 4, since this is our organizational meeting, we need to elect officers. Again, there is a chair and a vice chair. Those have to be board members, and a secretary and a treasurer. Those may be board members, but don't have to be. And then after we do the officer elections, we'll have 3 resolutions, 1 for bylaws, 1 for a public records policy, and 1 governing our advertisement process for our meetings. Just kind of nuts and bolts of running a public body. So with that, we'll start with the election of a chairperson for the Board of Trustees. The way these elections work is we need a motion to nominate. We need a second to the motion. Once we have a candidate, other candidates can be put forth. I will say that after doing probably 150 to 200 of these elections for various community authorities, I have not yet had a contested election, but it's possible. If we want to have a contested election, we can certainly do that. But we don't have to. Normally, there's no contest here, and the board comes to a consensus. So with that, we'll open it up. Do we have a motion to nominate a chair of the board?
I move to nominate Rory McGinnis.
All right, we have a motion from Amy for Rory. Do we have a second?
I second that motion. Jason Jenkins.
Thank you, Jason. So we have Rory as an official candidate. Do we have any other motions to nominate? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a vote. And normally for these meetings when we're in person, we'll do most of our votes by voice vote. Any member of the board for any voice vote can request a roll call vote. Given the nature of these video conferences, I find it just much more accurate, much better to do roll call votes. So I know it takes a little bit of extra time, but I think we'll just do roll call votes for all these. So when I call your name, just please tell me your vote and I'll get it recorded. So we will start with Ben.
Aye.
Heather Hiller. Heather, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yes.
Thank you, Heather. Darren. We still have Darren on.
Let me see here.
Yep.
Darren, he's on mute.
Oh. Hey, sorry about that, guys. I was on mute. Did you have a question for me?
Yeah, we're doing a vote for chair. So it's,
Yeah, I vote yes.
all right. Thank you, Darren. Amy.
Yes.
Emil.
Yes.
Heather Whaling.
Yes.
Trent Smith.
Yes.
Amanda Shaw.
Yes.
Rory.
Yes.
And Jason.
Yes.
All right. Congratulations, Rory. As the chair of the board, you can certainly take over the proceedings if you like, or I'm happy to continue for the balance of this meeting. It's your choice.
I tell you what, because I don't have it in front of me, why don't you finish it off, Greg?
Will do, Mr. Chair. So the next position is the vice chairperson of the board of trustees. Again, must be a board member. We'll use the same procedure. Do we have a motion to nominate a vice chair?
I motion to nominate Amy Taylor as vice chair.
All right, so Rory motions for Amy. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Trent. Any other nominations? Anyone else want to be vice chair? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a vote. We'll start with Jason this time.
Yes.
Rory?
Aye.
Amanda?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Heather Whaling?
Yes.
Emil?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Heather Hiller?
Yes.
And Ben?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations. Next position, Secretary of Board of Trustees.
I move for Jason Jenkins to be appointed to be the secretary.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Amanda.
Mhm.
Thank you. So we have Jason motioned and seconded for secretary. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll do a vote. We'll start with Amy.
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Heather Hiller?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Ben?
Yes.
Emil?
Yes.
Heather Whaling?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Rory?
Aye.
And Jason?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations, Jason. Next officer position is treasurer of the board. Do we have a motion to nominate?
I'm going to nominate my colleague Joe Schuler. He is CFO of CUC and unfortunately could not be part of this meeting, but this is one of the roles that requires a ton of work, I thought that's what he should get for not being here. I'm just kidding.
I second.
All right. I'm sorry, who was the second?
Darren.
Thanks, Darren. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll do a vote. We'll start with Emil.
I have a question. Is he present?
Joe? No, he is not at this meeting.
Would that be a problem for him to be nominated without him accepting the nomination?
No,
Okay.
he's willing.
Then yes.
I wouldn't do that to him, I promise. I'm not that bad of a colleague.
And Joe does have experience in the community authority treasurer as well. So Emil is yes. Heather Whaling?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Rory?
Yes, sorry about that.
No problem. Jason?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
And Ben?
Absolutely.
All right. Congratulations to Joe. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-1. This is the bylaws resolution for the board. Included in your packet is a very basic set of bylaws. That set of bylaws is probably used by 2 or 3 dozen different community authorities at this point in time. It's recommended that you have a set of bylaws, but it's something that the board can change at any meeting. This is just internal governance for the board. So happy to take any questions on the bylaws that were distributed at this point, or if no questions, a motion to approve.
Just a question. There's a reference to telegram and telegraph in there, as well as fax.
Mhm.
Is there a reason that we couldn't just get rid of those items? At least I have never received a telegram, and fortunately, faxes aren't used as much anymore.
We certainly could get rid of those references if you like. We try to be open with communications, but certainly recognize those aren't used very much anymore. So
Greg, can I make a motion with that a slight modification?
yep, and that's to get rid of telegrams, telegraphs. And do we want to get rid of faxes too, or keep that in for now?
I would get rid of it just from the standpoint.
Yeah, I would too.
I'm not. I wouldn't want something to say, well, I faxed it and then I never saw it, because we're not really looking for it.
All right, we'll kill the fax too.
Roy, to be fair to Greg, he did take out carrier pigeons before he sent it around. So
Yeah,
he was paying attention.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that's
All right.
I guess that's okay.
All right, Amy, we have your motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thanks, Amanda. Any further discussion or comments? Rory, I commend you for your close reading of the bylaws. That's a good job. So we'll go ahead and start a vote. We will start with Jason this time.
Yes.
Rory,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Heather Whaling,
Yes.
Emil,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Heather Hiller.
Heather, you're on mute.
I wasn't. Yes. Promise.
And Ben.
Yes.
Heather, we can start just going to thumbs up and thumbs down for you if you want. All right, the next resolution is number 2020-2. This is adopting the public records policy of the authority. Again, this is a records policy that's used by a lot of different authorities and public bodies. It's almost verbatim one that is promulgated by the Attorney General for use by public bodies. So again, it's something that we need to put in place, but it's also something that within the bounds of the law, the authority can modify from time to time as it sees fit. So any questions or a motion to approve the public records policy?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Thanks, Trent. Who was the second?
Darren.
Darren, thank you. Any other discussions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. We'll start with Ben. Ben?
Oh, sorry, you cut out when you, apologies. Ben, approved.
Yep. Heather? Hiller?
Yes.
All right. Darren?
2 thumbs up.
Hey,
Darren, yes.
Greg, I had one quick question. I apologize.
Yep.
Who is the point person for public records requests? Is that the chair? Is that
That's the
you?
secretary.
Is that the secretary?
Yep.
Secretary.
The secretary, correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay. I think we were at Darren for your vote. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes.
Thank you. Amy?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rory?
Yes.
That's a yes. Thanks. Amanda?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Heather Whaling?
Yes.
And Emil?
Yes.
All right. The final scheduled item of business is Resolution 2020-3, establishing the designated publication locations for public meeting notices of the authority. Again, for the time being, the proposal is to continue with notices in the dispatch posted on the city website, as long as the city is willing, as well as the Scioto Peninsula Community Authority website maintained by CDDC. Again, this is a living document. As folks have better publication or more publication or posting locations, we can always amend this to add. We also distribute a notice to the newsrooms for Business First, for the Dispatch and the Daily Reporter, in case they would like to send a reporter to these meetings to observe. It's rare, but we do sometimes get reporters covering these meetings, and we certainly welcome them as with any news coverage. So any questions on notice and posting locations for meetings? Any additions folks might desire from what has been proposed?
Greg, this is Rory again. This is my war against old technology. There's references to faxes in there. So I was going to recommend that we get rid of that, but I'm also, if people feel strongly about it, I'm also okay with keeping it in.
Rory, believe it or not, we do still fax these to newsrooms.
Okay. All right.
And we have actually been fighting with them over the years to try to get emails, and we keep getting kicked back to the newsroom faxes.
Got it. Okay. Hey, you got it.
Hey, Greg, I just want to make sure, as an individual board member, I would be free to share this with like the Franklinton Area Commission members, my Board of Trade members, and all that stuff, right? I mean, there's no prohibition for me sharing this information with people within the neighborhood.
That's
I
correct.
mean, the public postings. Okay.
Yes, public postings and really any of the information we're sharing with the board in this setting.
Okay.
Public meetings, it's public information.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
We don't expect to have a lot of confidential information shared with the board. When we do, we will clearly mark that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Trent, to that comment, I was wondering if you just wanted to add that group to the list of announcements when we send them out.
Well, I guess I'm not sure how we do that. I mean, what I was planning to do was just share it with the area commission members so that they could post that onto their site as well, because that really is the body that has kind of the neighborhood at large as their audience, and really with my organization as well, the Board of Trade. So, but I don't know how this body would actually post that with them other than me just sharing it directly. I mean, I'm open to suggestions if there's another way to do it or a logical way to do it, but I was just going to share it with them.
Okay. I mean, if just sharing the meeting dates is what you're saying?
Yeah, whatever postings Greg is referring to as far as the public meetings and, fair notice for the public to know about it.
Okay. I was just thinking that maybe we could send it to the chair's email address. And Greg, do we schedule these ahead of time? Are we already scheduled out for the next several meetings, or is it monthly? Or
yeah, right now we have one more meeting scheduled. Typically the way these authorities tend to work is you'll have 2 or 3 meetings at the start, and then you kind of settle into a once or twice a year meeting schedule.
Got you.
But so we can certainly add, email a notice of the meetings to the chair of the area commission.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just add that, and I'll share that contact information with you.
Great.
Thank you.
So is there a motion to approve with that addition?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Who is the second? Is that Amy? All right. We have a motion second. Is there any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. We'll start with Amy.
Aye. Yes.
Thank you. Darren?
Aye.
Heather Hiller?
Yes.
Ben?
Aye.
Jason?
Yes.
Rory?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Trent?
Yes.
Heather Whaling?
Yes.
And Emil? Yes. All right. So that concludes our scheduled business for the day. Is there any other business that board members would like to bring forward? All right. Hearing none, our next meeting is scheduled for July 25th, 2020 at 5 p.m.
August 25th, Greg.
Yeah, August 25th.
We are no longer in July, are we? Yeah. At 5 p.m. So again, it's a couple weeks away. Feel free to ask questions, ask for information, things you'd like to see on the agenda between now and then. We will try to get a meeting packet out the Friday before that meeting for you all to review over the weekend. And then last item is we have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
Possible, just because I know the next meeting, looks like there's going to be a number of items. If at all possible, we could get a packet out before the weekend. That would be, I think, really helpful.
We'll try to get it out as early as we can, Rory.
Okay.
With as much information in as we can. There's always a push-pull there.
Oh, yeah, I know.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Hey, Greg, before doing so, can you make sure that it's getting sent to my right email address? I don't have anything on the calendar for the 25th either.
Yeah. Darren, would you mind shooting me an email so I know
Yeah.
what address?
Happy to. And with that, I'll also make a motion to dismiss.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.